Cosmic Outlaw, The Legend of Roan Hale. In a galaxy ruled by unbreakable codes and cold machines, one man discovered the most dangerous algorithm of all: defiance. Part 10. Arrows of Memory in Campfire Revelry. Lady Mira Eldridge had never been the delicate flower the Spire nobles expected. As a girl, she had slipped away from tutors and gowns to the hidden glades beyond the estate vineyards, where old Harlan, then younger, though still gruff, had taught her the longbow in secret. Her father, Lord Eldridge, had encouraged it quietly, believing a woman who could protect her lands with words or arrows was twice the heir. By 14 she could split a wandering apple at 50 paces. By 18 she outshot most of the Spire's young lords in private matches they pretended never happened. The bow felt like an extension of her will. Heart would curve to her draw, fletching, whispering secrets as arrows flew true. She had kept the skill hidden since her father's death, practicing only in moonlit courtyards when the estate slept. The rhythmic creak of string and soft thud into straw, targets a private rebellion against a cage Cain sought to build around her. Roan Hale had discovered that rebellion years earlier, during a midsummer festival when both were younger and the world less heavy. He had come to Lockhaven as a champion archer from the frontier valleys, invited to compete in the open tournament. Mira veiled as a commoner to escape protocol, who had entered the lesser brackets for the thrill. They met in the final rounds shot for shot, neither yielding until his arrow split hers down the middle in a perfect Robin Hood that drew gasps from the crowd. Afterward, in the shadowed archery lanes while nobles feasted elsewhere, they talked for hours, of unjust taxes, of forest freedoms, of the way a bow could make a commoner equal to a lord. Interest sparked bright in Amedius's storm-gray eyes lingering on her unveiled face, her pulse racing at the scar on his cheek and the easy strength in his hands. They met again in secret over that summer, riding through the expanse, sharing stolen picnics in hidden glades, debating justice and laughing over shared shots at impossible targets. Always close hands brushing, breaths mingling, eyes promising but never quite crossing the line. A kiss hovered unspoken, too precious to risk in a world that would punish them for it. Until the night everything shattered. The false arrest, the deadly fight in her father's cabin, Roan's desperate flight off-world. She had watched from the tower window as enforcers dragged away bodies, heartbreaking with the knowledge he'd killed to protect her honor. They had met one last time in that same tower hours later, her smuggling him food and a cloak, tears finally falling. In the shadowed stairwell, with dawn threatening and separation inevitable. He had cupped her face gently, thumbs brushing away tears, and kissed her at last. Slow, fierce, tasting of salt and promises. I'll come back, he'd whispered against her lips. And when I do, the forest and the spire won't keep us apart. Then he was gone, vanishing into the expanse, leaving her with an ache that had never faded. Now, years later, that ache flared anew as Friar Tuck held court in the estate's firelit kitchen hall. The broad monk sat on an upturned barrel, stew bowl balanced on one knee, surrounded by cooks, vineyard workers, and wide-eyed children. The air smelled of wood smoke, fresh bread, and the herbal tang of Tuck's latest brew. He recounted the Vargo raid with theatrical gusto, voice rolling like distant thunder. And there they were, 5 of the finest dancers you ever saw, free at last and looking for adventure. Bold as brass, they asked to join the Greenwood camp. Lyra, the leader, emerald in her hair and mischief in her smile, sits herself right down by Roan that very night, close enough to share warmth, and offers to teach him a few new steps. Tuck paused, sipping stew with deliberate slowness, eyes twinkling as he watched Mira across the hall. She stood in the doorway, ostensibly checking evening ledgers with Harlan, but her posture had gone very still. Quill froze in midair, emerald eyes fixed on Tuck, a faint flush rising along her throat. Her free hand tightened unconsciously on the table-edged, knuckles pale. Jealousy sharp, hot, entirely unspoken flashed across her face like summer lightning, lips pressed thin. Breath quickening, the proud tilt of her chin betraying what her voice never would. Tuck hid his grin behind the bowl, enjoying the show for one indulgent heartbeat before continuing. Now Roan, our noble outlaw, mind you looks her square in the eye and says, "Calm as you please. You're bold and beautiful and twice as dangerous as any blade I carry. Any man here would count himself lucky. But my steps, heart and boot, are already promised to a lady in a spire, who shoots straighter than she curtsies and argues better than most generals I've known." The kitchen erupted in soft sighs and appreciative murmurs. Mira's flush deepened, but now with something softer relief, pride, that familiar liquid heat pooling low as she remembered the tower kiss. She lowered her gaze to the ledger, hiding a smile that threatened to break wide, fingers relaxing their grip. Tuck winked at a kitchen maid who'd caught the exchange, then barreled on with the rest. Meanwhile, deep in the Greenwood, the new recruits had turned camp into joyful pandemonium. The very next raid, a syndicate tax caravan guarded by overconfident drones, saw the dancers' creativity unleashed. Kit juggled smoke grenades mid-ambush, lobbing them in perfect arcs that bloomed into thick, sweet-scented fog courtesy of confiscated incense. Guards stumbled out coughing only to find themselves roped into an impromptu maypole dance around a tree. Ribbons courtesy of leftover barge silks. Storm vaulted atop the lead wagon, striking heroic poses while redirecting drone sensors with a mirrored veil sunlight flashing into their optics until they spun in dizzy circles. The Darios, both named Dario, eternally confusing swapped guard uniforms mid-skirmish, leading to a hilarious chase where mercenaries pursued their own comrades, shouting imposter. Lyra choreographed the entire retreat, the merry men exiting in synchronized cartwheels and flips, sleds of confiscated goods vanishing into mist while Alan's lute played a triumphant recessional. Little John, still recovering from Storm's backflip lessons, attempted one final somersault and landed in a bushy, merging leafy and sheepish to roaring applause. Will Scarlet declared it performance art with redistribution. Back at camp that night, Roan watched the revelry with quiet amusement, accepting a cup of liberated wine but keeping his seat by the fire's edge. When Lyra led a circle dance that pulled in everyone, Tuck included, protesting monkish dignitaron joined only long enough to spin Kit politely before retreating again, gaze drifting inevitably toward distant spirelights. Alan, ever the chronicler, added new verses by firelight, of dancers and jugglers and flips in the air, of guards tied with ribbons and left in despair. Yet Roan keeps his heart for a lady so true, who bends heartwood bows and bends nobles in two. Laughter rose higher, carrying on the wind, and in the estate kitchen, Friar Tuck finished his tale with a satisfied belch and a knowing glance at Mira, who had lingered far longer than ledgers required. "Sounds like our outlaw's still shooting straight," he said softly, just for her ears. Mira met his eyes, color high but voice steady. "He always has." Outside, the twin moons climbed, silvering the path between forest and spire. The threads pulled ever to their jealousy transmuted to fierce certainty, comedy weaving stronger bonds, arrows of memory flying true. The reckoning approached, and neither outlaw nor lady intended to miss the mark.